Hello all, this is the Crazy Cuban with another playthrough of Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. So today I wanted to explore the topic of hominin interactions with irascible animals and predators, as we can see in the video game. The first question that comes up to me is what ate hominins and how did they defend themselves from these predators? And I think there's no better place to look than our close cousins, the chimpanzees. By taking a look at what predators the chimpanzees have now and how they respond to those threats, we can begin to see how ancient hominins may have behaved, especially at this time period that we're playing 10 million years ago in Africa. Of course, there's the issue that modern chimpanzees are not a one-to-one comparison with ancient hominins. This is especially true if their behaviors are recent and if they're due to a change in environment rather than being ancient behaviors that we would expect from a common ancestor to humans. So with that in mind, let's look at some predator-prey interactions among the chimpanzees. So one long-standing theory says that group size and composition evolve both to defend food sources from competitors and also reduce the risk of predation. So, as stated in the previous video, chimpanzee society is described as a fission-fusion grouping system. So, basically, females actually are the ones that adolescent females will migrate to different groups. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that because it's not just throughout their lifetime. There's also changes during the day. Like chimpanzees will separate into small parties. So they'll have like a group of chimpanzees, like let's say a family unit like we see here in the game. And then they will separate into small parties. And those small parties will then go and forage. So this fission-fusion grouping allows for greater flexibility in exploiting dispersed and scarce resources. As you can see in the game, when you eat like all the fruit in an area, then there's no more food in that area until time passes. So chimpanzees have to constantly be, moving so that they can graze on different food sources. And hominins had to do the same. Hominins had to move around their range, a range that they defended, and they exploited several different resources. So I wanted to talk about a study at Tai National Park in Ivory Coast. And that study looked at the relationship between leopards and chimpanzees. So mainly, the study found that leopards are very much a danger to chimpanzees. There were 4 chimps killed and 6 wounded in the period that they observed them. And chimpanzees there have adapted to this danger by foraging in small parties, but that are still within earshot of each other, so that they can band together when they perceive a threat and they can, react to the leopard. A very interesting thing that I found is that the chimpanzees reacted to attacks by surrounding the injured or killed chimp and defending them from the predators. Moreover, the chimpanzees healed injuries where the injured couldn't reach, like on the back or on the head. And this help was offered as long as it was needed, sometimes up to like 2 months. And this would have been really cool to see in the game if you could not only heal yourself with kapok fiber, but if you could actually use the kapok fiber on your family members when they were injured. That would have been really cool. In one example, when a female was killed, two dominant males guarded her body and groomed her for 53 minutes, which is something that they wouldn't do to a live juvenile female. So this again goes back to that death amongst primates and how they perceive death. So there's a special relationship or a special care that is given to a dead family member or group member. So when chimpanzees are aware of a leopard or they hear the distress calls of a prey animal that is being attacked by a leopard, the chimpanzees will search the area systematically for them. They will not stop until they find them. In one example, they very stealthily and silently moved in the direction of the leopard and then chased it away. In another example, they used branches to hit and stab at the leopard when they corralled it in a hiding hole. So they actually use tools, weapons, like branches to stab at the leopard. And it was interesting because the leopard knew, in the example, the leopard was observed to know how to defend against these attacks because he bit at the hand. He didn't bite at the stick. He bit at the hand that was holding the stick. So that means that the leopard had seen this kind of behavior before. So that's interesting. And then in another study in the Mahale Mountains in Tanzania, there was a group of 33 chimpanzees that surrounded a leopard mother and her cub and dragged out the cub and killed it. So this basically shows that chimpanzees, when it comes to leopards and the size of predator that the leopards are, that size of a predator, chimpanzees are vulnerable to them when they're alone, very much like in the game. But when they band together, when they're in a group, especially with males in the group, they are very, very undaunted and unafraid of the leopards. They will go after the leopards and they will actually chase it and engage with it and try to... No deaths have been seen, but they'll try to harm it. They'll try to kill it. So at Mahale in Tanzania, lions were observed to eat at least 4 individuals, 4 chimpanzees. Now, the reaction to lions was different because chimpanzees responded with alarm calls, whimpers, climbing into trees, and silence. So this is very different. With a larger carnivore like a lion, the chimps don't pose as much of an opposition. So as you can see in the game, when you come in face to face with a Machiarodus, that's a very large predator. So, it's kind of interesting how they went about it in the game. They don't have several types of predators. I mean, they do later on when you go into the woodland and when you go into the savannah. But in the forest itself, in the jungle, you don't have like different sizes of leopards and then Machiarodus and things like that. But it would have been interesting to see different interactions based on how large the predator was. But it is very real. The game is very realistic in that a group of chimpanzees, especially armed with sticks, can drive a predator away. So that's really cool. So moving along from that, so there were some rare encounters. There's been some rare encounters of chimpanzees with pythons among several studies. And these all resulted in curiosity and fear. These studies were especially in Gombe and Mahale. And then in Thai, in Ivory Coast, the chimps gave distinct vocalizations when they saw a python or a viper. And they made sure that other individuals were aware of their presence. So this shows that the pythons and the vipers do pose a danger to the chimpanzees, but unlike the other predators, the chimpanzees are able to see them and they become aware of them before they're able to attack them, to hurt them. So and here we're taking on the irascible giant warthog. So I'm just playing around with, I'm just trying to move around, and we're going. I've got all my, as you can see, I have a group of chimpanzees and I have all of my babies. I'm actually making my way to the meteorite right now, and I'm going to take all my babies because the meteorite makes them mutate, and those mutations are what you need to unlock specific neurons that are not unlockable by your current hominins. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to the meteor right now. So we've looked at what predators predate on chimpanzees. So mainly leopards, lions, some eagles. But for example, chimpanzees responded less intensely to hyenas or wild dogs than leopards or lions. They didn't see them as much of a threat. And although they were wary of water because they can drown in deeper water, they go bathing very regularly, and they don't show a fear necessarily of crocodiles. It's not known. There's no study so far that says that they're afraid of crocodiles. It's not known whether they are aware of the crocodiles, whether they're afraid of them or not. But looking at the predators of the chimpanzees and how they respond, I want to now turn to what predated on hominins and how those hominins may have reacted to those predators. So an interesting study that I found was the tongue child, which is Australopithecus africanus, which you get to play as in the game. That one is actually been found to be the subject of an attack by an ancient crowned hawk eagle. So the study compared the skulls of monkeys in the eagle's discard piles, and these monkey skulls had similar marks on the eyes and on the head as the tongue child. So, most people think that eagles carry the entire animal up to their nest, but eagles don't actually do that. They dismember the animal very quickly, and then they take pieces back to the nest. So it's very possible that an ancient crowned hawk eagle, which is one of the larger African eagles, may have predated on Australopithecus africanus. There's also, a study that looked at Homo habilis 1.8 million years ago. in Tanzania, and based on the damage to the foot and the missing limbs, they saw that it was attacked by an ancient crocodile. So crocodiles did pose a threat to ancient hominins. Let's see what else. There's also direct evidence from the cranium of Paranthropus robustus that shows that a juvenile was eaten by an ancient leopard again. So leopards are not only modern, there were leopards and smaller, like medium-sized predators in the Miocene and in the Pleistocene. So the skull cap of the Paranthropus robustus juvenile showed that there were two distinct puncture marks that matched the mandible of the ancient leopard. But you'll see me roleplay a lot in this game. Like, I keep making contact calls with my chimps, and I keep, trying to communicate with them and checking up on them and stuff. Not only is it good to check up on them to make sure that they're not injured and they're not dying, but it's also good to, I just find it more rewarding to role play an early hominin. So I do contact calls very, very frequently to make sure that everybody's nearby and that we're going the right way and nobody's getting left behind. So want to look at Mr. Angry Whiskers, Macarotus. So Macarotus was 6.6 feet long, and it stood at 3.3 foot tall at the shoulder. It weighed 530 pounds, and its legs were too short to sustain a long chase, but it was likely a very good jumper. So it was most likely an ambush predator like a tiger. It had a moderate jaw gape of 70 degrees, similar to modern lions. So unlike Smilodon, it probably hunted smaller prey. It didn't hunt large prey like Smilodon did in North America. So that means to me that it's very likely, it's pretty likely, it's probable that Macarotus predated on ancient hominins until they obviously die out by the middle Pleistocene. They're gone. They're replaced by smaller lions and smaller cats. So with that being said, I want to talk about one study that I found, which was really interesting. The study said that early hominins may have used thorn bushes and thorn branches against predators. So there was an experiment where they covered bait with a shield of thorn branches, and the lions that approached it were very afraid of the thorns and didn't dare touch them. And this response probably originated with porcupines and their quills, but it's likely that potentially, of course, I mean, there's no way to know. None of this, all of these are with the caveat that there's no way to really know because they're all experiments done in the modern age. We don't really know what happened in the past. But potentially, hominins could have used thorn branches to defend themselves against predators. This is not something that we've seen savanna chimpanzees do. I'm not aware of it anyways. If you are, comment in the comment section and let me know. But I'm not aware of any studies that show that. But it would have been cool in the game. It would have been cool if when you harvest the thorn bushes, not only can you make a fence of thorn bushes on your hideout, but if you could actually use the thorn branches and scare the predators that way, that would have been really neat. That would have been cool. So as you can see, we got the meteorite. We mutated all 6 of our babies, and we're about to do our first evolution. So, having talked about that, I want to turn the tables around and explore how the hunted become the hunters. Basically, I want to look at how hunting may have evolved among early hominins, and we're talking early hominins. We're not talking about Homo habilis or Homo erectus, hunting animals or scavenging food. We're talking about, 10 million years ago, last common ancestor of chimpanzees and hominins and us humans. This topic is a little bit more difficult because of several reasons. One, there's no bones that have been found with tooth marks as early as 10 million years ago, obviously. And also, it's very rare, it's very hard to see whether the bite marks on bones were made by hominins or not. So there's a lack in the fossil record. There's a lack of information for us to draw upon. That being said, going back to chimpanzees, if we look at how chimpanzees hunt and we compare that to early hominin behavior, we might be able to draw some conclusions from that. So, in one study at Mahale, Tanzania, chimpanzees were observed to scavenge a fresh kill from a leopard that was still nearby. Now, this example may help the claim that scavenging in early hominins was confrontational rather than passive. So there's a couple different points that people make. One is that hominins were mainly scavengers, not hunters. And the other point they make is that hominins were passive scavengers that came upon the carcasses after they had been left, rather than confrontational, where they confronted the predator that killed the animal. But this study shows that at least with a predator the size of a leopard, chimpanzees are very much confrontational. They can potentially confront a leopard. So, moreover, that study compiled 49 cases of chimpanzee encounters with animal carcasses, and in those cases they scavenged meat in 36% of the cases, and they ate the meat while it was still fresh. They didn't wait till days had gone by till the meat was more rotted or the predator had left. They were very much on top of it right when it happened, while it was still fresh. So this shows that potentially a chimpanzee-sized hominin could confront a leopard-sized carnivore. Maybe not a Macarotus, maybe not a lion, but definitely a leopard-sized carnivore if they're in groups. Another study tested why the probability that chimpanzees will hunt goes up as party size goes up. So when the party of chimpanzees gets bigger, obviously they're more likely to hunt. You would think that since there's safety numbers and the hunt can be more efficient with more members, this would be the reason why it's an obvious reason. But the study actually found that it's specific males that act as catalysts for hunting behavior. And there was no evidence for clear cooperation as seen in social carnivores. So there wasn't a group effort necessarily in hunting. It was more specific males that began the hunt and then others followed. Since meat contains valuable micronutrients that are lacking in a vegetarian diet, so basically obtaining a small amount of meat, even if it's a small amount, it's beneficial. So another study in Gombe, Tanzania showed that in the period of 3 years, while they observed the chimpanzees, there were an average of 0.31 kills per male per 4 days. So every 4 days, on average, of course, there were 0.31 kills per male, or 4.65 kills among the two communities of males. On top of that, the amount of food provided by predation is estimated to have been about 600 kilograms per year for the two communities, totaling a number of 17 adult and subadult males and 20 adult and subadult females and 19 infants or juveniles. Now, the article doesn't necessarily say what percentage of the total diet that is, and that would be very interesting to see how much of the overall diet is made up by hunting, to see how important it is. I don't think it's going to be a huge amount necessarily, but again, going back to the article that said that even a small amount of meat is beneficial because of the micronutrients that it provides, that might potentially be beneficial, even if it's a small amount. So that was really cool. In the study, colobus monkeys were the most frequent prey, followed by bush pig and bush buck. So it would have been cool to see in the game, the monkeys that we see at the beginning in the video. It would have been cool if we could interact with those and if we could hunt them, because that would have been very, very realistic. And then on top of that, this makes me think, the bush pig, the warthog, that's a main source of meat there. So that's spot on for the game for sure. And then finally, the last study that I saw was one that looked at predation across Mahale, Gombe, and Thai. And that study concluded that chimpanzees have a distinct prey image. They basically have specific animals that they say, this is a prey animal, we can hunt this animal. Like, they don't necessarily hunt leopards for meat. They won't go out and hunt leopards. But they hunt colobus monkeys or bush pigs. So they have an image of what a prey animal is in their brain. Now, it's not clear how those traditions develop, or if it's a modern development, or if it's an ancient trait. But it's very interesting for the study of hominins as hunters, because if the last common ancestor of hominins and chimpanzees had an idea of prey animals, be it colobus monkeys or bush pigs or what have you, then hominins may have continued that, and they may have continued hunting these animals, which is really cool, and then may have evolved further hunting different animals as they moved onto the woodlands and the savannas. I'd be interested to see what kind of animals savanna chimpanzees predate on. I wasn't able to look at that. That'd be interesting to see. And it'd be really cool to see how savanna chimpanzees interact with their predators. One thing that was seen was that they have larger groups to prevent predation from lions. But it'd be interesting to see if they use specific tools. In the savannah, there's a lot less trees, so that would be a very interesting study to take part in for sure. So as you can see, I basically, once I locked in my 6 babies and their mutations, I went ahead and evolved. I'm not really worried about whether I have enough evolutionary feats or not. I'm really interested in locking in those neurons so that I can have them available in the next playthrough, and then afterwards I will actually get down to business and knock out some evolutionary feats. But so here you can see, I discovered the hidden jungle oasis. I assimilated nutrients from the vegetal kind of food. I assimilated nutrients from the berry kind of food. These are all of the evolutionary feats that you get in the game based on your interactions with the world, with the environment. And they propel you forward in time a specific number of years, and they make it so that you may evolve faster than science predicted. So science predicts that at a specific time period, doing specific behaviors, hominins evolved. But you can evolve faster by doing those behaviors earlier. So for example, if you hunt a Macarotus, that's something that we don't necessarily know when it happened. But if you use an obsidian scraper, for example, that's something that we know is way before the recorded time period. That's actually, it says 10,000 years ahead. It should actually be like 2 million years, or no, actually 8 million years ahead of when it's reported. So, but that's one of those things where the game was trying to be more of a game and not be completely faithful to the science, because the game is trying to be fun as well. It's trying to be, a fun experience. So in conclusion, we have looked at predators of chimpanzees and how they react to those predators. When it's a larger predator like a lion, they usually run into the trees and hide. When it's a smaller predator, a body like a leopard, they will systematically hunt it. We also looked at other predators that may have predated on hominins, like eagles and crocodiles. And we looked at how they might have responded to those predators with the use of thorn bushes and thorn branches. We also looked at how chimpanzees hunt, different strategies that they use within their environments, such as group dynamics. and we looked at how they scavenge meat from fresh kills of leopards. Confrontationally, they will confront the leopards and steal their kills. So I hope this very, very brief summary of, related articles has been beneficial to you, and I hope it's been interesting. It was super interesting for me. It was a blast to play through the game with the knowledge of hunting behavior and predator-prey relationships between chimpanzees and leopards, but then also taking that into account and looking at Macarodas and the hominins in the video game. That was really interesting for me. It was really cool to look at how pythons and vipers are a danger, but they're not necessarily a threat. Chimpanzees are able to know specifically where they are, and they can alert other chimps as to their whereabouts. So maybe that early hominins were also able to see pythons and vipers, and that's why in the video game they don't pose as much of a threat. For example, a single hominin with a sharpened spear can, scare a snake away. So that's interesting. Obviously, that happens later in the game. You unlock neurons that make you scarier towards predators. So I hope you've enjoyed this short playthrough of Ancestors, and maybe you've learned a little bit more about the ancient hominins that evolved to become us, and maybe you've gained a little bit more appreciation for our chimpanzee cousins and their daily struggles in the jungle. So with that, this is the Crazy Cuban, and this has been an Anthropologist Plays Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. Leave a comment and subscribe if you like this kind of content and if you'd like to see more. Thank you.